Well, thank you very much, Shane, and good afternoon to most of you and morning to those who might be on the West Coast. I'm Anita Brown-Graham. I'm host of today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about valuing data in individuals with similar experiences as part of our Leveraging the Secret Sauce of Relationships to Improve Reentry Outcomes webinar series. Of course, the entire webinar series focuses on the value of social capital. Before I move to the agenda, I want to be sure to recognize our partners in this work. First, ASPE with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which has funded the work leading up to and including this webinar series. Some of our colleagues from ASPE are on this webinar, so you all be really energetic so they can feel good about what we've done. And then, of course, second is RTI International. Dr. Philip Graham is also on the webinar, and he and his team have led this work with support from those of us at the NC Impact Initiative at the UNC School of Government. It has been just so much fun to work with these partnerships. I can't tell you, and I hope that you will feel some of the real value of this work we've done. So Shane, let's go to the agenda if we might. I've already welcomed, but we will also want to give you a chance to be welcomed by each other, and we'll do that in just a minute. We will then go to an introduction to social capital and the two social capital building practices that will be at issue today. Again, as I've said, those will be focused on how you include qualified individuals with similar experiences as participants in programming and staffing, and how you use data to build organizational capacity in social capital decision-making and evaluation. We will then have a real special treat for you, at least I know it will be a special treat for me. We'll have a presentation from Recycle Force, a highly successful reentry program in Indiana. Once our guests from reentry, from Recycle Force have concluded their 15-minute presentation, and I have had them promise they will stay on time, you will then have 15 minutes for a question and answer session with Recycle Force. So as they're speaking, please be thinking about questions you want to ask them about what they do, how they do it, and why it works. That all should leave you pretty well prepared for a few minutes of digging into the two practices. And then we'll be ready for a brief closing. I want to ask you not to do what I always do on webinars, which is sign off right when we get to the closing, because we've got some really good information to share with you about resources and what's coming up next. Okay, so let's see who is in the room. If you look at your screen, you will see on the bottom of the screen, after mute, stop video, security participants, a little box that says chat. If you press on that chat box, double click it, it should come up, and I would like you to tell us who you are and the organization you represent, so that everybody on the call has a good sense of who else is out there in this conversation with them over the next hour. I love this. You all are from all over the country representing lots of different kinds of organizations. And I probably should have said to you at the beginning, but you now know it for sure. This is not going to be a webinar where you can check your email and do some other work and be passively engaged. We're going to be calling on you to be in conversation and interactive for the entire time that we're together. One of the ways that we're going to use the chat box, because we're not all sitting in a room together and we want to make sure that what you are inputting is being responded to, is we've got a chat box moderator who is Dr. Maureen Berner, my colleague at the UNC School of Government. She's a professor of public management. and she'll be paying attention to all the questions and resources that you post. She'll answer questions that she can. If she can't, she'll either give them to Shane because they're a technical question, or she will send them on to the guests or send them on to myself to respond to. She'll also be posting some links and questions for you from time to time. So I encourage you to pay attention to the chat box.
Thank you, Anita.
You're very welcome, Maureen. So social capital can sound pretty fancy, but the truth is all of us have valuable relationships or social capital that we recognize can be built and used as a resource to support our quality of life. In addition, there are relationships that are held by different individuals and groups that can be combined and used to achieve the goals of the group. You think about it like this in the working world. To be successful, most of us will need to go beyond our education and training, and our success will depend on others who will inform us, correct us, assist us along the way. In other words, it feels when we're talking about social capital like the advice my grandmother used to give me, which is, it's not just what you know, but it's who you know. So people need different types of relationships for different types of support. And as you look at this slide that outlines these three types of social capital that experts usually talk about, bonding, bridging, and linking capital, you'll recognize some of the various ways that we move towards social capital to support different needs that we have in our lives. So bonding capital, that's about the relationships that are built among individuals with similar characteristics, experiences, or group memberships. This is usually the relationship that we have with our family, our friends, our neighbors. These are people who are like us. On the other hand, bridging social capital really refers to relationships that are built among individuals and communities or groups that have differing background characteristics or group membership. These are people who are different from us and bring a different worldview and perspective that expands ours and expands our knowledge base. And then finally, linking social capital really focuses on the networks and organizations that provide connections across power dynamics, giving us access to more resources. These are when we get connected to individuals or institutions in positions of power or with significant resources. Shane, let's go to the slide on the importance to the reentry population, please. So when people are reentering communities after incarceration, they're likely facing a time of particularly low or negative social capital. Why low? Many may have been disconnected from their families and friends. Things have changed on the outside since they've been gone. People have moved on. And so it's harder for them to get connected to the same networks they had. Or it may be that they actually need to create some new connections, either to meet community supervision requirements or to ensure that they don't find themselves running with the same crowd that caused them to get into trouble in the first place. Next slide, Shane. So let's talk a little bit about these social capital practices and why we think these practices actually have the potential to support program outcomes for reentry activities. The first one is about including qualified individuals with similar experiences and as participants in programming and staffing. So we talked a little bit about this bonding capital, the importance to have strong ties with people who have had similar experiences and can help you not just see beyond your current situation, but seize opportunities to move beyond that situation. The second, using data to build your program, your organizational capacity and social capital decision-making and evaluation. Well, here we're talking about how you use data practices to inform the kinds of social capital building activities you are engaged in, and how you then communicate those results to funders and community members so that they understand the most effective aspects of your social capital programs. Let me note here that these are 2 of 8 social capital practices that we will be sharing over the series of webinars. So before we jump into our conversation on these 2 important ways to build social capital, let me warn you that these are 2 of the 8 that our research suggests are important. On August 18th, we'll be talking about developing organic connections, peer groups, and accountability. On September 1st, we'll be talking about fostering organizational participant and mentoring relationships. And then on September 15th, we will be focused on incorporating relationship building practices into your organization. For more information and to register, if you have not already, for the additional webinars, please see the link that Maureen is now going to put in the chat box. So let's start by just doing a quick assessment on whether you on this webinar are already using these practices. This will be helpful to our guests as they talk about how they are implementing the practices in their programs. So we've got 2 poll questions for you. The first one is, do you include individuals with similar experiences as participants in your programming and staffing? And it's just a yes/no answer.
Okay, Anita, looks like we have almost everyone responding. I'll end the poll and share results.
Terrific. Well, here you go. 77% of you are already doing this. And 23% of you have come trying to figure out how you implement this practice, which is terrific. For the 77% of you who are already doing this, we're going to be asking you to share your insights and your challenges as we move forward. So pay attention. The chat box will be calling your name. Our second question is whether you are using data to build organizational capacity in your social capital decision-making and evaluation. Okay, looks like we've stopped getting new inputs here. So a few, 30% of you saying no, and then a little bit fewer people saying yes here, 70% of you saying yes. I know that Greg will be excited about this because he loves to talk about using data. So that should make for a very fun conversation, which leads me to introduce our speakers from Recycle Force. I'm really thrilled about this, and I think you're going to be thrilled by the discussion from a reentry organization that is really actively using social capital capacity building to successfully boost their program outcomes. As I said earlier, Recycle Force is based in Indianapolis, where it hires, trains, provides mentoring for, and helps formerly incarcerated individuals build and use social capital networks. The organization has been recognized nationally for using evaluations to help inform their mentoring work and targeting their services to high-risk populations. We're going to first hear from Greg Kiesling, who serves as the CEO and brainchild of Recycle Force. After that, we'll hear from Rob Smith, who entered the Recycle Force program in late 2013. He was one of the 1,000 people, I think, who were part of the US Department of Labor's randomized controlled trial that you'll hear more about. What's important for you to recognize right now is that Rob says he thought when he got placed with Recycle Force, he had won the lottery. And he worked like he had won something great, which caused the existing peer leaders to recommend that Rob become a peer leader in training. That was 2014. Rob became a full-time peer leader in 2015, and today he serves as warehouse manager and the head peer at Recycle Force. With that, I'm turning things over to you, Greg.
Anita, thank you very, very much. I think I got a slide coming up here. Shane, you got a slide? Recycle Force is a social enterprise, and a social enterprise is a business with a social purpose. But we're also, a new term I want to kind of launch out here today, we're an employment social enterprise, or an ESE. And an employment social enterprise has embedded a transitional jobs program within its social enterprise. So our purpose is to help men and women coming home from prison to develop and move on to other jobs. Obviously, we have an environmental benefit that we push out too, but our real impact is to men and women coming home from prison. Next slide. Shane, there we go. So here's a nice picture of several of the men and women in the program at the time in front of what we call the Beast. The men and women in the program named this big shredder Breaking Electronic and Shredding Technology. And so it's just part of the equipment that we have on site in our big recycling operation as we recycle electronics and other items. But the men and women that we're serving, and I see there's a lot of criminal justice folks on this call, we're serving people that are medium to high risk on their release. Indiana uses a test called the IRAS, but many states have different ways to measure the risk factor of those coming home. And so all the individuals that we serve are coming to us under oversight. And the oversight is pretty stiff. And I think nationally, the numbers are 50 to 70% of the people who get returned to prison each year did not commit a new crime. They had a technical rule violation of their oversight. And those violations are being in the wrong place at the wrong time, not working, not being able to take the drug test, or not having the $13 to take the drug test. Many of the things that cause people to get violated. And that's really the motivation of our program, to help people work and be able to manage the oversight so they can move through oversight into better jobs. So next slide. So we definitely are a family here. I think the people come in here and feel they're part of something bigger than themselves. One of the ways we foster the family and the connection with folks is the circle of trust. We sit in a circle by age. We leave a seat open for those yet to come. We leave a seat open for those who go on to bigger and better things. And those seats are constantly moving. In a transitional jobs program, we're changing faces and people all the time. But the circle of trust is led by the participants themselves. Rob and other staff members facilitate management. I try to stay out of the circle as much as possible. But we do have, the mayor will come in and talk, and our congressional leadership, other people will come. But predominantly, it's a way for people to take ownership of what's happening in their community and in their lives. And it's certainly with Black Lives Matter, it became a big issue. as we talked about in our circle. But it's this chance that Rob maybe will talk about a little bit about, just really taking control of who you are. So as we really work, I think we think of mentorship or people coming in from dominant culture. It's like the retired dentist or, the retired lawyer that comes in to becomes a mentor for the people we're trying to help. And that's not unimportant, but that's not what we're talking about here. We have those type of mentor relationships, but we're talking about building the capacity of the individuals who come in our program, finding their strengths and helping them grow. I will say, if you were able to be a drug dealer and manage, many lieutenants in that drug dealership, you have leadership skills. And it's how we convert those leadership skills into positive activities for the community. And again, these are high-risk individuals that are taking the biggest and most important leadership roles in our organization. Next slide. The folks, we pay for everything. When you come in and clock in, you pay for all your development activity. These group of individuals here are studying for their high school equivalency, and they're getting paid to do that. And the mentors have to be able to know when people are truly studying and when they need to be working and balance that all out. But a big part of what we do with our work is really driven by random control trials. We were fortunate to be in the enhanced transitional jobs demonstration talked about earlier, where 1,000 people were randomized into our program. The other 500 got our program, the other 500 went out and got services as usual. The two groups were measured against one another. And that's where Rob came from. That's how we found Rob. Early on in that project, there was another program called CEO, the Center for Employment Opportunities, that had seen in another evaluation, there had been impacts where there had been a former offender supervising the other offender that they were working with. And so we really began to build on this. And while we don't have all the answers yet for this, we're making progress in this field. We're looking for training that can help the individuals manage. It's stressful. Most of our peers will either do too much and burn out, or not do enough and just throw up their hands. So we've not found the perfect training. One that's been working is emotional CPR. It's the way case managers work not to burn themselves out. You see Rob shaking his head. He's been through this. So anyway, the TJ demonstration, or the ETJD, was a very important part of our process in our program. Next slide, please. I'll tell you, the gentleman there shoveling that, it was one of the peers when Rob was in the program. He's now the night shift manager at a warehouse here in Indianapolis. It's shoveling there. Another one of the peers came up with the concept, work is therapy. And he's now a pastor in a local church. So even the peers leave, and I worry that someday Rob will move on to something bigger and better. But everybody in our program is moving, and I think are transitioning. And I think that's the number one way to think about an employment social service, social enterprise. So we pay a wage, we pay FICA, we pay FUTA, and all the students' state unemployment taxes. We are pushing for a cleaner environment, but we're really pushing for a stronger workforce. We're taking the things that society's thrown away, our trash, and the people that we have thrown away that we've given up on in the criminal justice system, and we're remaking them into things that society wants. So thank you very much for this chance to speak to you today, and I hope I've given plenty of time for Rob, because he's the star of this show.
Thank you so much, Greg. The chat box has good buzz about how wonderful Recycle Force is or sounds to people who are just being introduced. Let me now turn things over to you, Rob, to talk a little bit about how social capital supported you in your work. And Shane, I don't think that's the right slide. Just go back to the last one for me, please. Thank you. Rob?
I see there's a lot of criminal institutional behind watching us. And first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Rob Smith. I did 12 years in the Department of Correction as a drug dealer. I was convicted dealing cocaine. And at that time when I came home, there was no plan for me. You know, when the judge gave my time, he told me good luck. He didn't tell me that I'm gonna have to find a job when I come home. I have to, you know, go back to my community, you know, that it was a thing that was saying once you're a drug dealer, don't nobody want you no more. So I was thinking that too, till I came home and my pro officer referred me to Recycle Force. When I made it to Recycle Force, they showed me, gave me a lot of hope that don't give up. You know, there wasn't no plan for you to come home, you know, to get a job. Wasn't no plan that you go to the Department of Correction. When they let you go, ain't no instruction, you know, they just let you out. And when I got to Recycle Force, there was a lot of opportunities here that they gave me. First of all, they gave me an opportunity to let me know that what I did in the past is the past. Don't look back, look forward. You know, that you are somebody. And I believe a lot of people, even a lot of judges, didn't know a lot of people like me was coming home. All they want to do was send us to prison, get rid of the problem, but we still was a problem. We still got to come home. And there was no job. I'm talking about no buses out there to pick us up. And one thing was so funny that I come home, the CEO, Mr. Kinsey, said he wanted to be a Recycle Force next to a prison. So when you come home, you go right to the Recycle Force instead of going back to the neighborhood, you know, around the bad scene that you was coming from. But as I got here, I learned to really pick myself up with hope. It offered me hope, empathy when I got here. As time went on, I still struggled hard. Being on parole was hard. Probation parole officer didn't want me to succeed. You know, they don't have nothing where you can go talk to parole officer, say, I hope you succeed and, you know, move forward with your life. But like I said, when I came to Recycle Force, I refer here, and like Miss Anita said, I did hit the lottery because Recycle Force did save my life. It was either here or the streets. And as time went on, like I said, I built myself up with my training. I still had a lot. I'm still mad at the judge for giving me all this time. And at that time, I built myself up with skills that I have here to learn how to, you know, walk this thing out, work it out. And working was the best therapy I ever could have received. Every Recycle Force was working. And like I said, there's a lot of more guys that's coming home, a lot of ladies coming home. And I like a lot of places like Recycle Force to give people a chance again, because a lot of people give up on people. Once you go to prison, everybody gives up on you. And I like to say everybody makes mistakes in their life, you know. And I believe when you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. And I believe, you know, if more places like Recycle Force was around to give people like me and other people a chance to get back with their family, to show that, you know, we're all part of this community, even good or bad, that we still got to live in this world together. And as time went on, I promised myself that I wasn't going back. And Recycle Force had a lot of training with the forklift, with the power industrial truck training, with the beach, running machine, know how to work, you know. When I left here, I was so tired, I wasn't thinking about doing nothing else, you know. And the social side of it, right, was the peer mentor. When we got there, it's really offered me hope and offered everybody in the program hope that we can make it. Tomorrow always better than yesterday. And as time went on, like I said again, I built my courage up and myself up to be a model for other guys coming home. You know, even females too, males, females to come home. That, you know, you can do this, you know. And what we learned in prison was nothing. You know, prison ain't teach you nothing in there, you know what I'm saying? And as time come on, and the peer mentor is really big, you know, that's the biggest social thing that I ever got into, where I can peer myself and peer others at the same time. You know, do unto others, you do unto yourself. And that's what I practice every day I get up. It's to always remember, you know, it's helping other people, help yourself in this world. And like I said, I'm a warehouse manager going on 8 years here. And like I said, the struggle is real, you know, and I'm talking about people that's coming home. It's really, the struggle is really hard out here, you know, to stay employed, to get employed, you know, and to be mentally ready to accept things. When things don't go your way, you still got to accept it, you know what I mean, to move on. And And I'm proud of Recycle Force. And like I said, I wish it was for 2 or 3 more of these places to help people come home when they really need to, need some help. I really do.
Well,
And
Rob,
also,
we're proud of you and proud of not just what you have done for yourself, but how you are pouring back into others, which is what social capital is all about.
yes,
I actually have a few questions in the chat box for you.
okay.
Um, a number of people are interested in how you became connected with Recycle Force, whether that happened before you left prison, and if not, how'd you find out about the program?
Yes. When I left prison, I didn't know about Recycle Force. Don't nobody know about Recycle Force. My parole officer referred me to it during a meeting. He said, there's a company, a nonprofit organization that's taking high. See, I was considered high risk, class A, felony. So, he said, there's a place over there that would accept high risk felonies. And you need to go over there, and apply yourself. So I went over and applied, and, I hit the lottery. Like I said, they brought me in because of my high risk crime behind it. So that's how I found Recycle Force, how we found each other. And like Mr. Kinsey said, it's not perfect what we doing here. Every day we just practice. We practice every day to try to make it as perfect as we can to help other people to come home. That's how we trying to get this thing where you come home and still, we call them return citizens. When you come home from prison.
Right.
Return citizen, we tell them you just return it back to your community. And the best way to do it is by working, it's by working. So that's how I really got here, through a referral to probation officer, parole officer. And we beg a lot of parole officer, probation officers to refer their clients to us. We beg them to do this. We begging them to refer them to us, So that's how I got here.
Greg, a question for you. A couple of people have asked about emotional CPR. What is that? And how does it contribute to building social capital?
Yes. Most of CPR is really just listening to someone through the whole thing, walking with them hand in hand. You don't have no answers. You can't promise nobody. You just listening to them at the same time and just being there for them. That's what it really is. Just really a good sounding board and just supporting them and what their decision is. And you always offer nice connection network where you can go to this meeting at night if you want to. Just always suggest somewhere that can move forward. You just really listen. You're not promising nobody nothing. That's what it really is.
Terrific. So Greg, let me ask you a question. What, if any, collaborative efforts are occurring between corrections and social enterprise employment organizations for transitional planning for reentry? And what would be your recommendations for addressing the barriers?
Well, when Rob came to us in 2013, as he said, there was really very little communication. It was this expectation that everybody was going to fail, and we were watching them, waiting for them to fail so we could send them back. Today, I'm very proud that our relationship with parole, our community correction here in Indianapolis, our probation department is better than it's ever been. They have a specific role to do. They're to create oversight, public safety, and adherence to the rules of court is laid out. Our job is to be the balance to that in many respects. So it takes time. We've been really almost 25 years working to develop the relationship with our correctional oversight folks. And so I don't want anybody to think they can just run out and embrace the oversight agency or the jail or the prison and they're going to be warmly welcomed. We've had to develop our reputation that we could balance public safety with putting people to work. And so it took time. These are different times today than we've ever had. Here in Indianapolis, our jail is at the lowest level it's ever been. Our prison is made huge numbers of releases. So I think this is a time where we can speed up those communications of how we can keep people from being returned. We really are in this very strange conundrum in the society. There's one side that wants to come down pretty hard. There's another side that wants to have a little more forgiveness, and there's a balance in there. So there's no easy way to do this. I know it's a long answer to your question, But it's elbow grease, it's talking with oversight, it's having these relationships. We work through the judges. We begin to, have better relationship with the judges because that's helped us. When we've had violation hearings and a judge has, sort of slapped down the oversight officer a little bit, those have been good moments for us. But our relationship with the head of probation, the head of community correction, the head of parole is the best it's been in 25 years. And my plan is to keep those strong relationships going.
Just as a quick advertisement, we'll be talking a lot more about how the organizational social capital can be leveraged for program participants in the third webinar. And I think you just heard a wonderful example of that from Greg. Let me stick with you for a minute, Greg, to ask you this question. How was the Circle of Trust inspired or informed?
Oh my God. We had hired a gentleman named Michael Cross, and Michael Cross came in with this idea. And I had no idea at the time that Michael was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party out of Toledo, Ohio, back in the 60s. And Michael put this out. It's an African circle or an American Indian, Native American circle to where people can sit together and air their grievances and hash them out between one another. So it comes, I have to give Michael Cross, he's no longer with us. He's now working with the Gullah people in the Carolinas. But he brought that circle. It was a concept that I had never really thought of. And it was part of my first real step, I think, into social capital, or less dominant culture down and more people up, changing. And that circle, there's lots of people that do versions of it. I know Karen in Chicago has the bell they ring, and there's all kind of different ways this could be done. But it's, for those of you who want the program, we pay people to be in the circle. It's a half an hour. Sometimes, as Rob can tell you, it runs over an hour because there's so much activity. But as Rob will describe, tell them how you describe it. When people go hunting, you have a way that you do it, Rob.
Yeah. We sit around in the morning, discuss chores in the morning. Might send a group to go fishing. Might send a group to go cut the trees down. The other group go on picking the vegetable. But we all on the same accord. But we got different chores that day. But we all on the same common ground. And this morning, we discuss it in the morning. And you believe it, it's really motivated in the morning, to have people feel like we're on the same team, regardless how we got here or what's going on, we all in this together. That's the whole part about the circle. It's a circle of trust. It goes round and round. It don't go up and down. It goes round and round. So that's how we all get it.
There are three quick mantras. I'll try to do them quick. We started out with one by the Dalai Lama. When you win, don't lose the lesson. When you lose, don't lose the lesson. The blessing is in the lesson. And that's said at the end of every circle. Well, one of the guys decided it was too deep. So he had this one, I ain't looking back because I ain't going back. And that was our second mantra. And then a participant decided, we got to be looking forward. So they've added a third mantra, I'm looking forward because I'm moving forward.
Yes.
And those are the three mantras that are said every single day at the end of the circle. We must take your hat off, you silence your phones, you put your feet on the ground, you listen intently, although sometimes people fall asleep, as they come into that morning circle. And it's a chance to dignify yourself and for your voice to be heard, no matter who's there. We've had people talk sternly to the prosecutor. We've had people talk sternly to the head of our Department of Correction. And we say what's said in the circle stays in the circle. And when you come in our circle, you respect it. And police officers often get pretty tough times in our circle, but they take it, and this is how we develop this social capital for people that didn't have a voice to talk about what they're experiencing.
Beautiful. So we're going to end the Q&A there. There are still a couple of questions in the chat box, and I promise you I will share those questions with Rob and Greg and get some responses for you. We'll share all of that in our mailing on Monday. What I want to do now is begin by pointing out that there are many ways to implement the social capital building practices we've been discussing. You've heard how Recycle Force is doing it, and they're doing it consistent with their context. As you think about either implementing new practices such as these or strengthening the ones that you have, it's important for you to think about the particular context of your organization as you're doing it. So let me introduce you to two additional organizations and some important considerations as we dig into these practices. The first practice, including qualified alumni, I want to introduce those of you who are not aware of the Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison program in New York to that program, which provides college education, life skills, and reentry support to incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. In this program, roughly 3/4 of the staff and managers are actually program graduates or were formerly incarcerated. And when you talk to the executive director, which we had the great fortune to do for a podcast related to this work, he absolutely credits the success of this program to the fact that he and other staff are alumni of the program. Next slide, please, Shane. So what are some of the factors to consider as you're thinking through including more qualified alumni in your program? First, we want to offer a disclaimer that not all alumni will be qualified to work in the program. So you've got to be very thoughtful about what your programmatic needs are and to ensure that you are hiring alumni who have the skills and the temperament to work with you. You also need some balance. So there are going to be people who bring those similar experiences, but you may have the need for other experiences and other expertise. And it's really based on the particulars of your program, how you calibrate between those two forces. And then finally, as you heard in the recycle example, training and assessment matters. Rob started as a peer intern and worked his way up to being the head peer. Think about using alumni in entry-level positions and internships first to give them a chance to grow into these positions. So we think that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that for all the reasons you've heard from Recycle Force, having people who have these shared similar experiences really helps with the program outcomes. But we want to be sure that we are clear that in everything in life, there is cost-benefit analysis and there are challenges. And so now I just want to ask you to type into the chat box what you see as some of the challenges in hiring former program participants as staff. Maureen, would you like to share some of the content that is being inputted into the chat box?
Yes, I think the responses that we're getting are responses that we've heard all along through this research. It's often that there are different boundaries, there are different restrictions. There's also the need to have the right supervision and skills, like you mentioned, the qualifications of the folks who are working with those coming into the program are important. So a third common response that's coming up is the stigma that's associated with this. And so I think it goes the range from stigma all the way to administrative barriers.
Rob, as our A shining example of qualified alumni. What do you think about these challenges that you're hearing?
Yeah, always gonna be challenges. There always be barriers. And one thing we see here, people, like Kingsley, Mr. Greg Kingsley said, CEO, it's not perfect what we do, and we have a little saying here where I say we are building an airplane in the air. That's what we do. So it let people know that it's work in progress. Struggle is real, it's really, and we just have this mindset that we in the air. Regardless of what we doing, we gonna build it in the air. Everybody gonna get aboard this plane, and we gonna, make life successful. And I feel like barriers is meant to be there. Trust issues gonna be there, but it's all about the outcome of what you looking for and what the program is offering people, And most of the people come here have trust issues, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of barriers. I'm talking about barriers so big now that it takes time to break them down, but what we trying to do is offer them hope at the same time that these barriers, you can go around them. You don't have to tear them down, go around them sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And it's what we training people here. And also, a lot of people drive past and see recycle for it, but on the inside, we really are recycling people's lives again, like it did me, gave me another chance. We do more than recycle electronics. We dealing with people. We're recycling people's lives every day. Give them another hope, chance at life. So it's really big what we do on the inside here that people see on the outside. And every day it's a struggle, every day. But we are getting better at it to handle these situations, to go around these barriers now. We got people in places now, social workers. We got case managers now to help clients to go around barriers now. It can't nothing take you back. Only thing can take you back if you look back. And we practice it every day. Ain't no looking back. Look forward in life. So it's good to have barriers there because we expect them to be there.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So let me take the audience to the second practice, Shane. Next slide. Let's dig into practice 2, which is about data and evaluation. And here I want to lift up a program that is not a re-entry program, but their use of data is so crazy awesome that we just had to share it. So FII tracks a number of metrics through monthly journals that families complete. The program is all about, as you might tell from the name, helping families to become independent. And they track finances, children, home health care. But what's really interesting to us is that they literally are tracking social capital. And the way they assess social capital is that they ask families who are in the program to talk about families they have helped each month and who has helped them. So again, going back to that bonding capital and how important that may be. And families get to choose from a drop-down menu of categories. I helped with transportation or childcare or information sharing or a sick and elderly neighbor, lending, donating money or food. And then they get to estimate the dollar value of that help so that they can see the economic value of their interactions with others. The data that's collected in the monthly journals end up showing that on average, these families experience increases in income and what's called total liquid assets, which is like money in your pocket, as well as decreases in the use of public benefits such as TANF and SNAP. So just a really compelling way of demonstrating how you try to measure the social capital and then how you try to give it some tangible benefit. So next slide, Shane. When we think about factors to consider when you want to implement or strengthen your work with this practice, obviously the first thing is many organizations will need some external expertise to help them ensure that what they are measuring well, or as we say in the academy, with reliability. Greg and I had a really interesting conversation when I talked to him about the importance of logic models. And what I said to Greg, which is what I will say to you all who are managing programs, I suspect that you do not wake up at night sweating thinking about your social capital strategies, but you are thinking about the outcomes for people participating in your programs. And that is likely what gets you sitting up in the bed in the middle of the night. What logic models help us to do is be very clear, because they're a type of map that outlines step by step how programs use resources and activities to achieve short and long-term outcomes. So this tool really helps you think about, why am I building social capital? What activities am I using to do it? And what are the outcomes that I expect to see as a result of that? And for those of you who want to dig some more into the logic model tool, I'll ask Maureen to put this site from ASPE into the chat box so that you have a chance to really spend some time playing around with how a logic model might be able to support the work that you're doing. All right, so back to the chat box. If you are measuring social capital in your programs, would you please use 2 or 3 words that describe what data you are using? So it could be peer contacts, as it is with FII. It could be contacts amongst participating families. It could be the number of meetings that people have with mentors. It could be connections with employers. It could be anything. But if you just give us 2 or 3 words that describe the kind of data that you are capturing to show how you're building social capital, that's going to be hugely helpful for us and for everybody on the call. Okay, so I see recovery groups that individuals go to, social media, community advocacy meeting, outreach, networking, great. Number of home visits, employment rates, absolutely. Meeting with mentors, how people are using services and the retention, housing, returning to jail, text messages, phone calls, emails, employers. Keep coming, keep coming. Juvenile contacts, with law enforcement, community provider contacts, criminal justice system contacts, mentors, home visits. Priors, arrest incarcerations. All right. Shane, would you share screen with Maureen so that she can help everybody see the sorts of measures that came up, please?
Can you see that, Anita?
I can indeed. So you get a sense of the sorts of things that people on this call are measuring, and we'll share this in the slide deck that we make available to you on Monday so that you can also have this. I see, Maureen, I see Brown Graham there as one of the things people are measuring. Now I'm worried.
There.
We'll have to work on that.
Right. Well, you're the expert. I always want to share with you. Share you with others.
That's great. So I'm now going to go into the closing, which is that part where I begged you not to sign off on us because I've got some important stuff to share. But while I'm doing that, if you have thoughts about particular things you want to hear on upcoming webinars, please go ahead and put that in the chat box. We are here to serve you. That's what ASPE has asked us to do, and that's what we intend to do. And so the more you can be clear with us about what content will resonate, the better the experience will be for you, and the happier ASPE will be with us. So of course, I wanna thank you for joining us. And remind you that you will hear from us again on Monday when we will email your certificate of completion, the links to relevant sources, including the recording of this webinar. And several of you have asked for the slides separate from the recording, and we will make that available to you on Monday too. You'll also be able to direct people to the recording of this webinar at rti.org and at ncimpact.org after Monday. And then I want to encourage you again to visit aspe.hhs.gov/social-capital, which is a website that has a lot of resources on social capital. And Maureen, can you please make sure that you put that in the chat box? So that's it for me, except for inviting you to join us again on August 18th. When we'll talk about developing organic connections, peer groups, and accountability. September 1st, when we'll do fostering organizational, participant, and mentoring relationships. And September 15th, when we'll talk about incorporating relationship building practices in your organization. And then you see the slide with the team for today. It is an incomplete slide. I don't want to end without first sharing my great gratitude with Greg and Rob, who I knew they were going to be great, but they were just rock stars today. With ASPE for supporting this work, with RTI for leading this work, and Shane, particularly to you today, for keeping things moving smoothly. Look forward to seeing you all again on August 18th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later, Nita.
Bye, Rob.
Bye-bye. See you later.
You're amazing.
You are too. The whole team.
You should take the rest of the day off, Rob.
I can't, no days off, no days off. No time.
Tomorrow is the peer meeting.
Yes, yes.
Every Wednesday is for those who are staying on listening, every Wednesday is the peer meeting. So Rob will facilitate the peers and hear all the issues that they're facing,
Yes.
and the clients that they're serving.
A couple questions I'm gonna bring them more about barriers, because that was really deep about barriers, you know.
Well, that was great, and people had really good insights. Some of them were barriers for the individual participants, but some of them were structural barriers, which you all have talked about some of that. So can you get probation officers to make referrals? Are there limitations that the court has put on activity? I mean,
yes.
There were a lot of criminal justice oversight people on this call, which is a good sign.
It was good. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
We're in a new day. Let's just hope we can keep it moving forward and don't let that pendulum swing back to the old ways.
Yes.
You got it. All right. Well, I'm jumping off, everybody, and look forward to our continued connections.
Thank you, Miss Anita.
All right. Thank you.
Everyone.
All right, Barbara. Thank you.
Great job. Great job,
Barbara.
everybody.
Thank you, Miss Maureen.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joy. Yeah.